How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video here on the Nat Automotive channel, and in today's video I'm going to be continuing on my C5 Corvette build, and in particular I'm going to be starting the process of tackling the job to fix and replace the damaged inner fender, or wheelhouse as GM calls it, on the front end of the car. Thank you all so much for stopping by and checking out this video. If you like what you see in this one, definitely consider subscribing and checking out all the other content I have on my channel related to this build, my go-kart build. And speaking of my go-kart, I do have an Etsy store where I have the blueprints and designs for sale as a digital download on my Etsy store for $25. So if you're in the market, or you're interested in doing a custom, like hands-on fabrication project and you like go-karts, definitely go check that out. The link for that is in the description below. So in the video where I was painting the front frame rails and impact bar on the car, I briefly discussed the idea for the next major repair area to get the front end situated is the front wheelhouse and inner fender. And I'll take you guys over to the car in a second to just kind of briefly show you guys the damage again. But basically this process, I don't want to rush it because it's definitely a delicate process, because how I mount this new inner fender greatly determines the panel gaps for the hood, fender, and door. So I want to make sure I do it right. So I've been doing a ton of research, which I'll show you guys here in a second. So I'm all caught up to speed on the proper way to do this. This is going to be part one of probably 3 or 4 videos related to this like sub project with the car. So today in particular, what I'm going to be doing is getting the the replacement inner fender and wheelhouse, which was pulled off of a damaged car. So it's not a brand new part. I don't even think you can buy these parts brand new from GM anyways, but I got it off eBay for like 360 bucks, which is a pretty good deal compared to what the other ones were going for. This one has a little bit of damage in the very back corner because it's like a small little arm that sticks out, so it's really easy to crack that. So I got to do some repairs on that and prep the bonding surfaces that the glue goes on for this new inner fender. And in addition, this is the part where I'm going to be doing some experimentation and seeing how the process works to removing the glue that holds on the panel. So for those that don't know, this inner wheelhouse is actually panel bonded to the frame. So it's an interesting way to do it. I don't know exactly why GM chose to do it this way rather than just bolt it on. That seems a lot simpler, but I'm not a chassis engineer, so maybe the flex or something like that with the bolts, and the fact that this part is fiberglass, it wouldn't hold up very well, but I don't know. So let's get a little off topic. But basically what I need to do is test to see how I can remove the old panel bond off the fender, and I'll be consulting a official GM repair manual that I found recently that I'll share with you guys. Bringing you guys on over to the car, I just want to show you some of the damage areas again if you haven't seen my last videos. But so basically this inner fender, or wheelhouse, like I said, as GM calls it, is a fiberglass piece that is panel bonded to the car with a 2-part epoxy based adhesive. And so basically, I'm sure when this car is going on the assembly line way back when, they had a special jig or fixture to make sure this gets set in the right place, because essentially it has to be shimmed vertically and shimmed horizontally, inboard outboard, to make sure that this rib here matches up with the rib and mounting surfaces on the outer fender, because this is the part that the outer fender mounts directly to. So this car was involved in a little bit of a front end accident, so hence why I had to repair part of the front impact bar, but it also caught the driver's side headlight, and the driver's side headlight on this car mounts to the frame here in 3 locations, and it also mounts to this inner fender and in 3 locations as well. And because whatever hit this car, I don't even know if it was another car, if this guy ran into something. I still don't know the full story of how this car got damaged, and I probably never will, but it caught the headlight and it basically pushed the headlight into the fender and also kind of kinked it up. So the headlight was, I'm guessing, in the up position because they're the hideaway headlights when this got hit, so it kind of like pushed it back and down, so it cracked. You can see just how much damage there is. So see all this, I mean there's holes in this and cracks everywhere. This is all indented, so it's not like that on the replacement one. It's cracked down here in 2 places, so this is where the duct for the you know, it's not a direct to the brake caliper, but it's a channel for air that mounts into, so that's not supposed to be split there. This kind of got pushed back a little bit. It's not as bad now, but when I first got the car, this was actually pushed back enough to where it was rubbing on the tire when I turned. And then as you go up the inner fender more, you can just see more damage. There's a crack here. All these holes, or a lot of these holes, are ripped out because it just pushed the whole thing out. So the panel, when I had the car on it still, when I still had the panel on the car, the fender was pushed out, so the gap here is actually pretty large. So all these holes are ripped out. There's a nice crack here where it kind of delammed and then like kind of sat in front of itself. So that's the bulk of the damage on this thing. So it's, if I could, I would much rather just try and repair this thing like in its current position, so I don't have to deal with this annoying alignment of the new fender. But I think this thing is just too far gone in so many areas. So I'm gonna go ahead and get out the replacement inner fender that's sitting on the go-kart over there. I can't wait to get all this situated too, because body panels take up a lot of space when they're not on the car. So you got that hood back there, the outer and inner fender, and a bunch of other stuff. So it'd be nice to have a little bit of a more cleared up garage space. But I'm gonna get that out. I gotta clean it off because it's covered in dirt and dust from being on a replacement car and whatever warehouse it was in before I got it. And then I'm going to show you guys the areas where it gets bonded to the frame and actually part of the firewall and bulkhead as well. And then we're going to start prepping this to remove this remaining adhesive and start the process for prepping to mount it. Okay, so I got the thing resting on the front bumper here since it doesn't like to sit up on its own. But this is basically the view looking at it from the car, from the driver's side. So you can see it in this position. This is how it should look. Again, there's no indentation here versus on this one, it's pushed down and cracked right there. So lots of damage on the one currently on the car, so that's why I'm going to go through this arduous process to replace it. But basically, so on this side, this is the inboard side of the inner fender. You can see all the bonding areas now. So there obviously has to be a way to remove this off the car without damaging it to the point where it's not usable, because somehow these guys did it to be able to sell this second-hand one on eBay. So part of it gets bonded here, here, down this strip, in this little area back here, and then this little tab back here. And this is the part that's cracked a little bit that I'm gonna have to fix with some epoxy. It's not bad, it's still mostly intact and is, you know, sound structurally, but I wanna fill that crack with epoxy to make sure it's completely good. But the point of today's video is I'm gonna be doing a test and testing the recommended way to remove the panel off the car and removing the adhesive from the damaged panel. Now from here, I'm gonna take you guys to my iPad and show you guys real quick just the repair manual that I found for repairing all parts of the bodywork and frame on this car. Okay, so I got the official GM repair manual for framework, bodywork for collision and repair shops pulled up here. It's from a website called Corvette Web Central. I'll post a link to this repair manual in the description if you're doing the inner fender repair or other repairs on this car. So it's kind of cool. You got an exploded view diagram here. This basically shows all the removable components from the car and what type of material they're made out of. So this is how I found out that the front bumper is made from something called SMC, which is actually a very annoying material to work with, which I'll be going over in a future video when I have to re-repair that thing. But we scroll down a little bit. So this is the kind of impact bar repair areas, which we already did and consulted that. So now we get to the front wheelhouse. So basically right here it says the front wheelhouse consists of two pieces, an outer and inner piece. The outer piece mounts and rivets to the, it doesn't really rivet, it actually just screws. I don't know why I said rivet, but the outer fender screws to the inner fender, and the inner fender is bonded to the frame in several areas. So we want to consult this area here where it says remove or disconnect. So it says basically remove all panels to get access to the components to the front wheelhouse, wheel, battery cover. Oh, that's if you're doing the passenger side. Visually inspect for damage to the frame. Already did that, we're good there. So then it talks about if the frame's bent, you need to use a special tool, which it's not, so we're good there. So now it says right here, remove the 4 bracket bolts attaching the wheelhouse to the front hinge pillar. So I've already done that. Basically, there's a bracket, you can kind of see the outline of it, that mounts this piece here, which kind of controls the wiper. So there's a bracket that goes from here and mounts to the firewall slash like bottom of the A pillar here. So there's 4 bolts that you have to take out there. Already did that. But basically the process for what we're going to be doing today is composed in this paragraph here in paragraph 4. So it says remove the 4 brackets attaching the that bracket I was just talking about. Heat and pry to remove or dislodge adhesive beads attaching the wheelhouse to the vehicle. See figure 310. And remove the damaged wheelhouse. So let's go to figure 310 real quick. Okay, so this basically just shows you all the bonded areas that I was already talking about. So you can see all the little blue here, that's where you're supposed to apply this adhesive. So it kind of goes up, around here, up over the front control arm and shock, down on the other side. This little U section here, and then they don't really show it, but this little piece right here, the part that's slightly cracked on my replacement one, it also gets bonded to the like firewall slash bottom of the A pillar. So that's pretty much it. I mean, they don't give you a whole lot of extra instructions. Oh yeah, here's the bracket that you're supposed to remove. Looks like that. So they don't give you a whole lot of extra instructions on how to do this. So basically the process is you take a heat gun, and I have a metal scraper slash pry tool that I bought. It's really thin, so hopefully it'll get in there. And you just apply heat with the heat gun, and supposedly it softens this stuff up. Now, right now in its current form, this stuff is like rock hard. It's as hard as the fiberglass. So I'm weary, but also hopeful that when you begin to heat this, it just softens somehow. But that's not how a thermoset plastic works. Is, you know, when you have a 2-part polymer, which is what an epoxy is, when you have a part A and part B, it doesn't remelt, you know, because of like the cross-linked in the polymer fibers and whatnot. So it's interesting that they use the method to heat and pry for a 2-part epoxy adhesive, but I guess it works. You know, the guys that removed this panel off whatever car it came off of obviously did it somehow with only minimal fraying of the fiberglass. So I think first what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this kind of more properly and sturdily set up so I can apply some more force to it without it falling over. And we're going to try and remove the adhesive off of this part of the panel and see how it goes. One thing I do also want to mention, I didn't go over it in the repair manual, but it does say in all the areas where, oh, and it's also bonded on the bottom of this little bracket that stems out. But they also say in the repair manual to try and leave like little strips of the existing adhesive, but because the adhesive has some thickness to it, it's not just pressed flat. That's how they kind of quote-unquote shim this fender to be in the right spot. So that's going to be a whole part of process, like the 3rd video where I'm actually applying this fender to the car. But just so you know, when you're pulling the adhesive off, you're supposed to leave little strips so it kind of gives you a better gauge of what the factory shimming and gapping is set at. So in case you're wondering, this is the little tool that I got from Home Depot that I'll be using to pry the old adhesive off the fender. It's just a little like 1-inch putty knife that you use to scrape random things off. So I think this is the best thing I got. I got a little bit of a thinner one, so that way hopefully I can get a little bit more force behind it and lift up one little area at a time of the different parts with the adhesive. Alrighty, here goes nothing. I start on the lower heat setting and then work my way up depending on how it reacts. Alright, so I've had it on there for about a minute on the low, so let's give this a shot. Oh, it did soften up. Oh, man. Okay, so it seems to be working.
This is just very weird to me that a thermoset plastic reacts with heat to make it softer. I guess if you heat anything up enough, it melt or burn. So the chunk just came off. Oh, nice. Okay. It'd be nice if this came off in just one giant piece, which it looks like. I think I need to apply a little more heat to this side. Alright, so I got that other part heated up, so I'm going to go from this side now because I'm going to try and leave a little piece in the middle here, like I said, as a shim. Worst case, if I don't, I'll just try and leave the glue that's on the car. Ugh. Stuff is definitely tough. Oh shoot, it's all coming off. Oh, we're coming off. There we go. Ooh, that's hot. Now, alright, so now there's just a little bit remaining in this upper corner up here, so I'm going to just try to hit that real quick. Okay, so this first piece came off in something of this fashion, so I'm going to save these just to, again, I tried to keep them on the car, but it did just kind of want to come off as one giant piece, so it was hard to leave little strips, but there is obviously still glue on the actual car that's holding that panel. I was going to have 2 points of reference, but so I got this piece here, the middle piece, and then the side piece. So I was actually really surprised how easy this stuff came off with just a little pry tool like this, because this stuff still is like rock hard, but I guess heat is just enough to loosen and soften the outer edge of it to pry it off, and it didn't screw up the panel too bad. So you can see there's a little bit of fraying from some of the fiberglass, but there's no like cracking or anything crazy like that. So it shouldn't be too bad to prep. So the last area that I'm going to get off is this little guy, this little strip of adhesive here. Actually giving a harder time than the other part. Trying to get it to just peel all of it. There we go. Voila! That was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be really difficult to get this stuff off, and it was going to like destroy the panel in the process. But I guess if you follow the recommended GM procedure, which is just heat and pry, that's all it says, then it should do the job. It didn't do too much damage to the panel. I'm going to have to just, again, clean up all the bonding surfaces with a sander so we get rid of all the loose kind of like frays of fiberglass fibers that are kind of hanging on, so that way when we put the new adhesive on, it bonds to a good sturdy part of the panel and not all the like fraying parts, and then it'll have some movement to it. So but obviously you want to keep it rough so the adhesive gets a better bonding surface, so I'm going to stay really rough in the grit for the sandpaper. So that's what I'm going to do next, is I'm going to get this thing set up on the sawhorses outside, because I don't want to be sanding fiberglass and get fiberglass dust in the garage. So I'm going to get that set up on the sawhorse, get my DA sander out with some really rough sandpaper, and just not to, I don't want to eat into the panel. I want to keep the thickness there, but I'm just trying to rough up the surface, get rid of all those loose fibers, so we get a good bonding surface when we put it on the car. This is such an awkwardly shaped part. It's going to be interesting trying to get this thing to stay.
Alright, here we go. I actually bumped down to 220 grit just because I didn't want to eat through the material on the fender quickly because I'm using a power sander. And then I'll go back after with 80 grit, just sandpaper, and do that by hand to rough it up before I apply the glue. You can see this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying I don't want to glue to this, because like, see this little flake of fiberglass? I don't want the glue just to bond to that and then get no glue behind this, and then it's just going to be a weak bond. So I'm going to try and cut this piece off and just get most of that down so I'm gluing to the strong part of the panel still. Oh, this does not want to stay. This part was actually a little bit more cracked than I remember. Maybe, I don't know if I damaged it while it was sitting in the garage, but so luckily I've got some epoxy on hand, some JB Weld that I'm going to mix up, and I'm going to throw on this. But I think what I'm going to do first is clean up the entire panel, get it all nice and clean, and then that way I can see if there's any more cracked areas, because I thought I saw one other one that's definitely a lot more minor, but definitely want to get this fixed up before putting it on the car. Okay, so got this thing nice and cleaned off. It was pretty dang dirty. There's dirt caked up in all sorts of nooks and crannies of this thing. So it took, I was, wiping it down with Simple Green and some paper towels, and that wasn't cutting it. So I whipped out some engine cleaner and degreaser and a kind of a plastic scrub brush, and that seemed to do the trick a lot better. So it looks almost like a brand new inner fender, with the exception of a few damaged parts. So there's a crack somewhere along this top rib, right here. So there's a little crack right there that I'll just kind of hit with a little layer of epoxy, and then I got to fix this little tab back here that's kind of flimsy. So obviously I got to wipe this thing down pretty good because I don't want to be applying epoxy to a wet surface, and then I'll let it kind of air dry for a while, and then I'll be applying on the JB Weld Epoxy. Okay, so I did a quick run to Home Depot. I did have this stuff already, this plastic bonder JB Weld Epoxy, and it works great on fiberglass, but the thing that I just wasn't a fan of, it just dries tan, and on certain parts of this, you know, you can see it, especially on this top rib. Actually, that's not true, but anyways, regardless, I got this stuff because it dries a gray color, so it kind of matches a little bit better, so it looks a little bit more OEM, so I'd rather just do that, because this stuff was like $7. So I'm going to go ahead and mix some of this stuff up. Again, we got those two little crack spots. We got one here, one down here, and then I got to fix up this back piece here that was cracked probably when the people who dismantled the car that this came off of, when they pulled that off, they probably weren't too ginger with it, and that just ripped because it's such a small little bracket that hangs off. So I finally figured out a good way to hoist this thing up and hold it in place while I'm working on it. Is just this two little step stool here, and I got it resting on the handle. So that works much better than the sawhorses over there. You probably saw me struggling in the earlier clips when I was cleaning this thing off. So now it's nice and sturdy, and it's open in the back here, so I can start, I'm going to mix up the epoxy and get it set to then apply on the fender. So one thing I actually learned in doing all my research on these structural adhesives and panel bonds is that anytime you use a two-part epoxy, even stuff as simple as this JB Weld, you actually want to prime the canisters, because there could be some air bubbles in either side of the part A or part B, and so if the part A comes out sooner than the part B, you're going to have uneven material amounts, because these are 50-50 blend. So it's good to just run a quick little bead, see, like right there, the black came out first, so if I would have done this just straight in my mixing tray, we'd have uneven. So I'm going to prime this, go ahead and run this now so that you can get both materials coming out at the same time. So for some reason the gray was a little bit clogged, but now it's primed and ready to go in our mixing tray. I'm going to cap that off. I'm just going to do little bits at a time with the small parts first, and then we'll do the big part on the back of the panel at the end. Of course, anytime you do a two-part epoxy, you want to ensure complete mixing, so that's why they do it two different colors, so it's easy to see when the parts have completely mixed, so you don't see any gray or light gray or blacks. It's just one solid dark gray color. Okay, so we got our little two patch repairs wrapped up here. So I got the top here, and then I also hit it on the back side underneath this little rib, and then the crack also, I forgot, extends down on this side a little bit, and this part is visible, so I'm glad that I did end up going to get some gray epoxy so it does blend in a little better. I am probably just going to hit this with a really fine grit of sandpaper just to kind of smooth out some of the bumps and lumps in the way I spread it, because I'm spreading this with essentially a popsicle stick, so it's a little difficult. Then we got our second spot down here. So again, nice and epoxied up, hit it from the back side as well. This side actually I could see through, so when I pushed the epoxy through the back side I could see it squeeze out, and then I hit it on the top as well. So we got good coverage there. Again, I'll probably just hit that with some really fine grit sandpaper to smooth it out once it's all cured up. So the last part in getting this inner fender all set and ready is epoxying this little back flange. So we got to hit this whole channel here with epoxy because the crack did kind of start going down this way. And I forgot to mention, I did take my Dremel tool with a little bit on it, and I grooved out all of the crack channels so that the epoxy has some space to get down in and really seal that crack up. So we got to fill that channel, and then this is the back area that really saw a bulk of the damage, so we got to hit it from this side and the back side. But I am also going to take this speed nut out so I don't accidentally epoxy it to the fender.
Alright, so we got that all mixed up, so now let's start slathering this stuff on. Stuff isn't the most easy to apply, but we'll see how good of a job we can do. That channel's not looking too bad. Alright, so that's looking pretty good on the front side, so now I'm going to go ahead and hit the back side. Make sure we get this before it starts to tack up. And I probably should do the bottom as well. I didn't even think about that. Okay, so I got all the epoxy set on there as best I could. I was working with it for about 5 minutes and then it really started to get tacky and even more difficult to spread than it already is. These two-part epoxies that come in these packaging here and you mix them and spread them with these popsicle sticks, they don't spread well to begin with, so if you're looking for a pretty job, just keep that in mind. You might have to do some finishing work after the fact. But I was able to get it spread on there pretty good before it started to really tack up on me, so we got a good amount of epoxy in this channel here because the crack did kind of start growing down that way. Got it all down here, avoided the hole where the speed nut goes, and then we got the up on top here and then on the back side as well. So on the back here and on the bottom. So when this stuff fully cures up by tomorrow, this is probably going to be even stronger than what this part was before it was cracked. So that's pretty much going to wrap up part one of this Corvette inner fender slash wheelhouse repair. Again, in this one we were just prepping the replacement panel to get it ready to put on the car, and I was also just testing to see how true it was to follow the GM repair manual. If you just heated the stock panel bond, how well that pries off, and luckily it was pretty true. It just give it some heat, and with a metal spatula you just pry it off and it comes right off with pretty minimal damage to the fiberglass. But I'm not too worried about damaging the part that's getting pulled off the car. But anyways, so this thing's curing up now. By tomorrow the epoxy will be all nice and hard and set. So in the next episode we are going to be removing the damaged inner fender from the car. So that's going to entail taking some detailed measurements of the location of where the current one sits, as well as some detailed photos, just so I can look back and cross-reference when we have this thing off the car and I'm trying to get the new one set. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, definitely subscribe for a lot more Corvette content to come. I understand some of the content might be a little dry right now just because I'm doing some, not the most exciting like repair work on the front end, but as soon as the front end gets situated, I'm going to get into the more fun performance mods and custom mods with all the 3D printing. So that's when the build's really going to get exciting. So thank you all so much for watching, especially if you stuck to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. So again, subscribe if you haven't. Follow me on Instagram for kind of some behind the scenes content. And other than that, I will see you guys in the next one.